House prices across the UK rose strongly into the end of 2019. The latest reading has come from the Halifax, showing a 4% rise in December year-on-year and a 1.7% month-on-month gain. This reflects the move up that we saw last week from the Nationwide Building Society, which reported a lower figure, but nonetheless the biggest rise since November 2018. What does 2020 hold for the UK residential property market? Well, Jeremy Leaf joins us now. He owns the Jeremy Leaf Estate Agency in North London and is a fellow of the Royal Institution of the Chartered Surveyors and a former chairman of the residential unit of the RICS. Jeremy, good to talk to you.
Morning.
It's been a while since we saw this sort of house price gain. What is it that changed things in December?
Well, of course, we had the election made a big difference because people have been worried politically for some time which way we were moving, and that clearly has an impact on certainty and confidence and decision making. So a lot of people were holding off. So as soon as the election result became clear, or even before that actually, when it was pretty clear which way the wind was blowing, we did see a release of some of that pent-up demand.
The political wind aside, supply and demand is responsible for setting a price in the market. We've seen this move up. Are we seeing more demand, or is it still restricted supply? We spoke to you about this about 18 months ago, and you were saying then there weren't as many houses on the market as you'd like to see as an estate agent.
Yeah, well, a lot of this increase we're seeing not just in this Halifax figure, but also we saw with Nationwide and in other surveys, and indeed what we're seeing on the ground. A lot of the increase in prices is attributable to a shortage of stock, shortage of supply, which is pushing up prices rather than a significant increase in demand.
Why is supply so restricted? What is it that's preventing people from putting their house on the market?
Yeah, well, there's always, never usually one silver bullet. There's usually lots of reasons, and here we're hearing that very much at the sharp end, and that is stamp duty, the costs of moving, concern about where prices are going in the longer term, because of course we're clearly not out of the woods in terms of the EU, our relationship with the EU is concerned. And until that becomes much clearer, that will again deter many people from moving.
What do you want to see then from the government? The government's responsibility is to make sure that capital moves freely as possible around the economy. So far as the housing market is concerned, the residential market, what is it the government can do then? Is it just about stamp duty?
It's not just about stamp duty. It never was, and it never is. It's always a range of issues. What we want to see, responsible people in the industry want to see transactions. We want to see people moving, prepared to get out there and buy and sell and act freely. And the government can help to facilitate that by not putting restrictions on moving and an appreciation of the sometimes less is more, and even perhaps changing stamp duty or other taxes, making it easier for people to get on and off the housing ladder. That is much more important to the economy generally.
But it has to be said as well, of course, and this has been something which has really been a big issue, especially for the London market, is the fact that prices are so relatively high compared to income. And of course we know that the Bank of England and the Financial Conduct Authority is very keen on making sure that people don't over-lever themselves going into this market and having too much of responsibility in terms of how much they borrow. That presumably is a big issue, and that will, with this 4% rise, is only going to compound that issue, and there's going to be less people able to buy, surely.
Absolutely, absolutely. We want to see more transactions, more building, which the government have promised. That's something else they can do, is facilitate more house building. They've been talking a good game, but we're not actually seeing that much of a change. You know, the signs are good, we're moving in the right direction, but until we see really big change, that's not going to have a big impact on availability of stock and encourage more people to move. But that's really what we want to see, more transactions.
What about
keep prices in check?
Absolutely. What about the Brexit bounce, as some people are saying is already happening? We're getting money flowing in. We've seen it from abroad, actually, and I know that some estate agencies in London are seeing foreign buyers come back into the market as well.
Yeah.
If we do see a little bit of a motor behind the British economy as we get more clarity on Brexit and interest rates start to go up, that surely then is a bit of a headwind, isn't it?
Yes, it can be, but it's a range of factors and a range of issues which will definitely determine activity. We are seeing more foreign interest because a lot of people were holding off before they had more clarity on Brexit and the election. That's starting to change, but we'd rather see more balance across the field, across the board, not just in one particular market or across the field. But because in London, that's where affordability is most stretched. But that's where, as well, we're likely to see prices not rising as much. In fact, other surveys have shown prices have actually fallen year on year in London, whereas the rest of the country has rather taken over.
As someone that is concentrated just on the London market, which part of the market at the moment is seeing most resilience or most turnover, if you like, in terms of properties? Are you talking about the first-time buyers, or are you seeing a lot of increased volume at the top end?
Well, actually, I'm not answering directly. It's actually probably in the middle, because people looking for the smaller family houses, that's the area particularly where we've seen quite a lot of resilience, where perhaps families want to get children into schools and are looking at a 5 to 10 year period, and not so concerned with ups and downs of the next year or two, whereas, of course, first-time buyers are more concerned about what happens immediately. They may not be in the property that much longer. The longer-term purchases, perhaps of the smaller 3 and 4 bedroom family houses, that's where we've seen some strength.
So do you see 2020 carrying on as it ended 2019, or do you think this little bit of a rise that we've seen is as much as we're going to get?
I think we will see more activity, because there's definitely more confidence than we've seen for some time. I think the test will come for the market later in the year, when we find out whether or not we are going to leave the EU exactly on the terms that has been suggested, or whether there's more cliff edge negotiations. That will again add to uncertainty and reduce confidence. But if it continues as it is, we expect to see a modest rise in prices and hopefully a larger increase in transactions.
Yep. Okay, look, Jeremy, it's a pleasure. Thanks indeed for joining us. It's Jeremy Leaf from Jeremy Leaf Estate Agency in North London. He's a fellow of the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors and the former chairman of the residential unit of the RICS.